10, I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. There are renewed calls for the government to impose a windfall tax on energy companies after oil giant Shell reported a big increase in profits. The company revealed record first-quarter results of £7.2 billion, triple the amount it made in the same quarter last year. It joins rival BP in posting better-than-expected profits for the first 3 months of 2022. Surging oil and gas prices have helped offset the cost of boycotting Russian supplies. Polling stations are open across the UK as millions of voters take part in the local elections today. The Prime Minister took his dog Dylan with him as he cast his vote this morning. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer's also voted alongside his wife. Voters are choosing local representatives in England, Scotland and Wales, and there'll also be an election for the Northern Ireland Assembly. Polling stations will close at 10 p.m. and most results should be known by Friday evening. Interest rates are expected to rise to their highest in 13 years when the Bank of England announces its decision this lunchtime. The base rate set to go from 0.75% to 1% as the bank tries to bring soaring inflation under control. Matt Drumfield's head of Debt-Free London. He says inquiries have soared 250% since this time last year.
Many people think that you go into debt because you've splurged on a credit card or you've overspent on the weekend and not realise it. That's really not the situation whatsoever. Debt doesn't discriminate. We're all facing a cost of living crisis with the cost of your mortgage maybe going up later today, depending on the Bank of England's announcement, your rent going up, your food going up. All these are essential costs that you can't control and you're left with nothing at the end of the month.
In Ukraine, the governor of the eastern city of Luhansk says 5 civilians have been killed in shelling in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, in Mariupol, another 300 civilians have been evacuated from the Azov steelworks to the relative safety of Zaporizhia. President Zelensky is asking the UN to help ensure the safe passage of a further 200 people, including women and children, still trapped inside the besieged port city.
The second phase of our evacuation operation in Mariupol ended today. 344 people were successfully evacuated from the city and the outskirts. That's how many people left today for Zaporizhia. Our team is preparing to meet them in the same way as over 150 people who were successfully transported from Azovstal. All of them will get the necessary assistance. All of them will be transported in the most supportive manner by our state.
A number of Ukrainian troops remain at the Azovstal steelworks. Former British Army commander and chairman of the Cobra intelligence group, Colonel Richard Kemp, says Russia's determined to crush the remaining resistance there.
I think they will use, maybe, as we're hearing already today, increasing ferocity to clear them out of there, and it probably won't take much longer. I've heard talk of Russians considering flooding the cellars and the chambers that they're hiding in order to either drown them or flush them out. And I think that's quite a likely possibility if they haven't already done it.
The UK is providing £45 million in funding to help the most vulnerable in Ukraine. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says the money will go to women and children who face increased risk of sexual violence and exploitation. The UN estimates nearly 16 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance in the country. The UK and Japan are set to agree on a new landmark defence agreement when the Prime Minister hosts his Japanese counterpart in London today. It follows the government's Defence and Foreign Policy Review published last year, which announced a tilt towards the Indo-Pacific. Downing Street says the agreement will build on defence and security technology between both nations. Actress Amber Heard has told a court she was heartbroken the first time her ex-husband Johnny Depp hit her, as she tearfully described the alleged incident that she says changed her life. Mr. Depp is suing Ms. Heard for libel over a 2018 Washington Post article, which his lawyers say falsely implies he physically and sexually abused her while they were together. In his testimony, Mr. Depp denied any wrongdoing. The trial continues. Doctors are being asked to delay their retirement to help clear the COVID backlog. In a letter to staff, NHS England is asking them to stay on to help plug the 110,000 personnel shortage and help train up junior doctors. The General Medical Council says 21,000 doctors are due to retire this September. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though it's back to Patrick and Mercy with To The Point.
Thank you, Rhiannon. Well, good morning to all of you at home. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up for you to kickstart your day, so here's what's on the menu.
Yes, OK, well, Ukrainian soldiers are engaged in intense fighting with Russian troops who have entered the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol, where the city's last resistance is bravely holding out. We'll be live in Kiev for the latest on the conflict there.
Yes, we'll be speaking to a Ukrainian MP, so stay tuned for that. And we'll also be asking this morning what is being done to tackle online radicalization, and is there a growing problem of far-right extremism? We'll be discussing this with a radicalization expert.
Yes, indeed. And the Bank of England is expected to increase its base interest rate to 1%, the highest level in 13 years, in a bid to tackle inflation. Our reporter Rosie Wright will tell us how exactly this is going to affect all of us.
Yes, that's all coming up, and much more as well across the next couple of hours. And you can get in touch with your views.
At this point, this is going to be the most difficult day of my broadcasting career because it's local election time, people, OK, which means that I'm now not allowed today to pass any comment on politics, basically, just in case I influence you with my power. I can't tell you who to vote for, who not to vote for. So strap yourselves in, will I inevitably commit a crime?
Yeah, but please go and vote. Just vote.
Can we even say that? What
yes,
are the rules?
We can encourage people to go and vote.
But you can't tell them to vote.
Get in touch. Yes.
Okay,
get in touch with us on GBVs at gbnews.uk about anything we're speaking about today, and we'll get to
politics.
As many as we can. Right, it's day 71 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and Ukrainian soldiers are still reportedly fighting, quote, bloody battles with Russian troops who have entered the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol. The city's latest resistance is holding out.
Yeah, bravely so as well. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky used a national address last night to plead with the UN to help save people who are trapped there, as official reports suggest that around 200 civilians are still sheltering inside, including apparently about 30 kids.
A really dire situation there. Over 150 people were evacuated from the steelworks earlier this week, and one of them was Anna. She's a worker at the steel plant who made the dangerous journey to the relative safety of the city of Zaporizhzhia.
Good effort, though.
She sent us this exclusive testimony about her ordeal.
My name is Anna. I'm from Mariupol, and I'm a worker at the Azovstal steelworks. I was there with my daughter. Her name's Maya. She's 14. We went down there on February the 25th, and we just came out of there, so it's been nearly 70 days. One of the strikes was particularly close to us, so an elderly woman was hit by a shockwave and hit her head, injuring it badly. That time, our military servicemen were nearby, so they provided assistance to her. One of the women sheltering with us was a former medic. My daughter and I were lucky to have not been hurt. Everyone coming to the shelter had stocked up on some food. When we ran out of stocks, our military started bringing us food, sharing with us cereals, bringing kids some sweets. That's how it was. Of course, everyone harboured hope. Throughout all this time, we hoped we would be out of there eventually. Despite 2 previous unsuccessful attempts to evacuate us, hope dies the last. We'd been praying all along. Everything worked out. We're grateful to everyone involved. It was a really, really long way home. We're really happy that at least for now, we're safe.
Goodness me, it's harrowing stuff, isn't it? Well, joining us now live from Kiev is Ukrainian Member of Parliament, Kira Rudik. Kira, thank you so much for joining us. First, can I get your reaction, please, to the latest from the Azovstal plant? What's going on there?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Well, we have talked to our soldiers who are still trapped there and who had the chance to retreat. and they told us that they understand that it is a suicide mission, but that they would not retreat. They will be protecting Mariupol till the last person standing. Right now, the most important point for us is to make sure that we get the civilians out. You cannot even imagine 2 days ago when we were able, along with the United Nations and Red Cross, to get 156 people out. We were all in tears. It was so emotional. It was the result of so many negotiations, steps, discussions, etc., so that 156 people were able to have future, to have life. And right now, there are still children that are in Azovstal, and we are working with the United Nations to get Russians to let them out, as well as the wounded soldiers, and as well as elderly and women, like everybody who cannot be fighting. Unfortunately, right now, because the fighting continues and intensifies, it is very complicated, and we do not know if these negotiations will be successful. The issue that we are facing is that Russians are preparing for their May 9th. It's the victory day that post-Soviet countries were celebrating as a victory in Second World War. It's a day like with all the parades on the main squares. So right now Putin is pushing to have some victory to show to his nation, and he will probably want to have the Mariupol as his victory. We, of course, are pushing not to let him do that, but he will be throwing all his forces into conquering the city and making sure there's no Ukrainian soldiers left there.
Yeah, and I noticed the EU flag there behind you. The EU has said it plans a Russian oil ban and war crimes sanction. Boris Johnson, of course, the UK Prime Minister, was the first international Prime Minister to address your Parliament the other day. I just wondered what your reflections are at this moment about how the EU is reacting to this at the moment and how the UK has responded.
So EU have really came up to the plate and stepped up with the sanctions. We really are expecting that the sixth package that includes the oil ban would not be amended a lot and would be voted as soon as possible. It will harm Russia so that they will lose over $75 billion. However, I need to let you know that this sanction package will start acting in 6 months. So whatever you have seen right now, what's going on in Mariupol, in other cities of Ukraine, the whole war will have to continue for 6 months right now. So it's incredibly painful for my nation that we are paying with all the time that is being used by the nations to prepare to get rid of Russian gas and oil. We are paying for that with our lives. And this is actually exactly what Boris Johnson said when he addressed Ukrainian parliaments 2 days ago. He was the first international leader who said, we were wrong, we should have started sanctions, we should have started all the activities in 2014 when Russia invaded Ukraine for the first time. And this is what we have been telling the world for a long time. 8 years my country is fighting with Russia. 8 years the world was doing nothing. And right now, when countries start to realize what's going on, when nations start coming up to the plate, improving sanctions, sending us weapons, it's all time. It takes a lot of time for the democratic countries to organize, to go through all the bureaucratic procedures. And we are paying for this time with our lives.
Yeah,
and this is critical right now.
I understand. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to rattle. Look, I agree with you completely, and really, please don't misunderstand me when I say this. You know, we all salute your immense bravery and your immense courage. But at the same time, I must say I'm very surprised to see an EU flag behind you because, as far as I can see, they've not particularly done anything, and in fact, they have been funding the war against you, as far as I can see. If I was you, I must say I would struggle to sit in front of an EU flag, given the money that they are paying Russia on a daily basis, which is funding the war. But for the first time now, it does really appear as though the international community is thinking that Ukraine really actually could seriously beat Russia. We, for example, have been sending a lot of arms to you guys. The Czech Republic, I believe, are doing the same. And we're only doing that now because we really do think that you guys can win. And that's a tremendous feather in your cap, a tremendous feather in the Ukrainians' caps as well. Do you think you will beat the Russians?
I am sure that we will beat the Russians since the day one. If anyone allows themselves here to think differently, we will not stand up another day. You have to push yourself and believe in things that the whole world told you that are impossible. And coming back to the European Union, you know, in 2014, my country faced this question: do we want to be with Russia and move together with them, or do we want to join EU and move with the democratic countries? And my country made a choice, and we have it written in our constitution: joining EU and joining NATO. And this is actually exactly the point why Putin attacked, because he said that he cannot have near his border the country that wants to join NATO and the EU. This is why I have both flags behind my back, because it's aim of my people, of Ukrainian people who made their clear choice. There could be flaws in European Union, there could be flaws in NATO, and I can talk to you hours of what should have been done differently. But when we are choosing between democracy and autocracy, when we are choosing between countries that respect each other and allow themselves to develop, and countries that attack each other and threat themselves with nuclear weapons, our choice is very clear. We are willing to work together with the democratic countries, with the European Union, on building the new, improved, great world. And this is why we are so thankful for all the support that really is starting coming up together. It was not so particular at the very beginning, this is for sure. But right now, it's coming up. And I just want to thank for every step that has been taken to the United Kingdom and its government, to the European Union countries, and to encourage everybody to speed up. Because we will be standing, we will be fighting, but we do need the world's support on that. Because we do believe that we will win. And we are happy that the world right now starts to believing it as well, not only in the words, but in people's hearts.
Indeed, and we wish you every success. I do think you will send the Russians packing, and I commend you guys so much for what you've done, really. I think, you know, send them off. Anyway, right, Member of Parliament there, Kira Rudik, thank you very much for joining us. Look, desperate scenes, obviously, in Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think anybody would have predicted it would have gone on this long. I think day is 71. It is. But, you know, people underestimated Ukraine, clearly, because of Russia's military might. And Russia's been exposed as a country that's not as strong, clearly, as they assumed and as the world assumed.
Well, Ukraine has done us all a favour, I think, actually, and by that I mean the world, right? Because actually I think they've exposed lots of myths about Russia and about their armed forces, about their intelligence, for example, and about Vladimir Putin potentially as well, in a way that we simply wouldn't have found out. If Ukraine had rolled over, we'd still be thinking, wouldn't we, that the Russian army is this huge, absolute powerhouse. OK, right, it is a powerhouse, but it's not as good as we thought it was, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think, a good news for the rest of the Western democratic world. But we'd like to hear your views, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We can go to those now, just for a couple of minutes. Paul's emailed in just to say, morning, Patrick and Mercy. That's the entirety of the email.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Paul.
That's Paul Hill, by the way, who is our most emailed into person. So thank you very much for that. We've got one here on Beergate, by the way. I can't talk about it, am I? I can't talk about it. It's election day. OK, fine. Some stuff might have happened with beer, some stuff might have happened with the party. I think I've done balance now, haven't I? OK, there we go.
Yeah, well, I can read this one, though. John has said, I know you're about to discuss online radicalism, which we'll be discussing after a short break in a second. Bear in mind that officially there is only 1 in 5 who are defined as far right, and it's officially recognised that organisations, individuals, our ground levels are believed to be wary of reporting any concerns about Muslim-based radicalism. So he's basically pointing to the fact that people are more reluctant to report Muslim-based radicalisation than they would be far-right radicalisation. So the figures might not be comparable.
Well, the figures are, and this teases up, but it's almost like we planned this. It teases up perfectly for what we're going to be talking about a bit later on. But the fact is that, yes, people do go on about the rise of the far right. And look, the far right obviously is a bad thing. And so any extremism is a bad thing. Don't misunderstand me. But just because that's rising doesn't mean that it's anywhere near the level of the threat that we currently have from Islamist extremism in this country.
Yes, well, we will get stuck into all of that just after break with our expert guest on security and radicalisation. So stay with us for that. But first, the weather.
Good morning. Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update. Still a bit fresh out there first thing this morning, but things warming up a little bit by this afternoon, certainly where we see some sunshine, feeling warmer than yesterday. A dry day for most, but not everywhere. High pressure is controlling the weather across the southern half of the UK, but notice there are weather fronts further north, already bringing some rain to the northwest of Scotland, and I suspect the Highlands, the Western Isles, staying fairly dull and damp all day. Rain at times over the Northern Isles. 1 or 2 showers elsewhere through Scotland, but I suspect most of the south of Scotland through the central belt will be dry. The odd shower for Northern Ireland, perhaps across England and Wales. It might see 1 or 2 showers this afternoon, but for the vast majority, it's dry. Yes, often fairly cloudy, but where the sun comes out, feeling warmer than yesterday, 18, 19, 20, 21, maybe a touch higher in 1 or 2 parts of the south. Cooler where we've got that more persistent rain, which will continue through this evening across the Highlands and the Western Isles. And if anything, this rain kind of organises itself into a line. We've got a weather front which will bring more persistent rain, slowly heading south towards the central belt and across Northern Ireland during the early hours. So a wetter start to tomorrow here. Again, for most of England and Wales, dry overnight, maybe turning a little misty in places and temperatures down into single figures. But a different feel for Friday, certainly across Scotland, Northern Ireland, a wet start, and that rain will push southwards. So it could turn heavy as it turns up across parts of northern England and Wales. 1 or 2 scattered showers in the south, but again for much of southern England, the Midlands, eastern England, a dry day, but predominantly cloudy. Brighter skies for Scotland and Northern Ireland by tomorrow afternoon, some sunshine and just 1 or 2 showers. A fresher feel here, again for most places, temperatures in the mid to high teens. There are signs of things warming up, however. Those weather fronts slip away during Friday night. High pressure moves in for the weekend, bringing most places a dry and a fine weekend, and signs of things turning warmer still next week.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. It's 10:24. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Moroki on GB News, live as ever on TV, online and radio.
Yes, now, in March 2019, a far-right extremist and white supremacist opened fire and killed 51 Muslim worshippers in Christchurch in New Zealand, which was one of the worst mass killings in the country's history. Well, now, in a new development, the official inquiry into the shooting is including in its terms of reference the online activities of the gunman.
Yeah, so the National Coordinator of the Islamic Women's Council of New Zealand called this a landmark moment for the accountability of digital platforms. So I think it's about time, to be fair, but anyway, there we go. And an expert, basically, she's an expert in just how serious radicalisation actually is. It's clearly something that's not exclusive to the far right, clearly, but are more and more people becoming susceptible to it? That's what we're going to be asking today. And what can we do to tackle it?
Yes, well, joining us now to discuss this further is Dr. Alan Mendoza, the founder and executive director of the Henry Jackson Society, which is a foreign policy and security think tank. Good morning, Dr. Mendoza. This case is obviously in New Zealand, but it's far-right extremism and extremism in general is something that happens all over the world. When it comes to thinking about Britain, what is the state of far-right extremism in this country at the moment, especially compared to Islamist extremism?
Well, so it's interesting you raise that point in connection, because often it's left out and people talk about, this version of extremism or that version of extremism. It's quite clear that extremism of all kinds, whether it is right, left, Islamist, other, is a problem, and it's a rising problem in general. If you look at absolute numbers, the biggest security threat this country faces is from Islamism, from radical Islam, from those sorts of extremists. But in the last few years, there's been a big surge in far-right extremism, mainly actually caused by the online-style radicalisation that's actually come out of this New Zealand terrible case as well. So it's a big problem. It's a growing problem. It's not as big in absolute terms as Islamism, which is by far larger, but still we want to obviously combat it as well.
Do you think the problem of far-right extremism would go away if governments got a grip, frankly, of various elements of Islamist extremism?
Well, there is in part, a symbiotic relationship between, extremists of this stripe and that stripe who play off each other. So far-right extremists will look at Islamist extremists and say, look, these people are dangerous to society, let's get them. Equally, on the other side, Islamists are like, look, the far right, they hate us.
Did we have a problem? Sorry, it's just a quick one. Did we have a problem with far-right extremism in this country before we started having increasing levels of Islamist extremism?
Oh, absolutely. There is a homegrown far-right issue that's irrelevant to Islamism as well. I was going to say, there is a symbiotic relationship between extremists of different kinds, but I'm afraid the hatred will foster and continue in both camps, regardless of that. And yes, there was obviously a far-right problem. You'll recall the National Front in the 1970s, for example. There wasn't an Islamist issue in Britain in the 1970s, but there was a far-right issue. Mostly beforehand. We've had a long history, unfortunately, mercifully small in number, but of far-right extremists in this country.
And what is the nature and character of far-right extremism at the moment? Because I do recall when I was younger, and the BNP was still a thing back then, and I do recall that one of their policies, for example, being to repatriate, I think, first and second generation ethnic minorities, for example. Yeah, which would include somebody like me as a first generation immigrant. What does far-right look like at the moment in society? Is it still along those kinds of thinking? Do they still have those kinds of ideas?
Well, so mercifully, it's interesting you raise the BNP. So mercifully, we don't have a political party at present that is engaged in, actively trying to really seek election in a majorly successful way. So if you recall about 10, 12 years ago, there were lots of fears that BNP was making inroads electorally and people might be susceptible to that point of view. So that's all gone. What you're now getting is a whole host of more disparate groupings and individuals who are just sharing hate online. The far right, much more, say, than radical Islam, is driven at the moment by conspiracy theories online, by hate online, by sort of people essentially radicalizing each other by saying ever more inflammatory things about immigrants, about religions in that way. And that's what's causing spikes there. It's encouraging individuals to get up and do things that we would rather they didn't do. And that, of course, makes it also very difficult for the security services to pick up on it. You don't have organized groupings as such going out there preparing for, for mass casualty attacks, but instead you've got individuals who want to go out there and either build a bomb or, start killing people in various ways. So that, of course, is a big concern, a big problem, and it does indicate a change in how the far right operates in this country, and indeed, actually, you see that internationally too.
Can I ask you question about what is the literal threat that the far right poses, because if you ask the ordinary man and woman on the street, you know, what's the last far right attack you remember on British streets, they wouldn't be able to really come up with anything, whereas we know of multiple Islamist extremist attacks that have taken place over the last few years. So a lot of people in the inbox I was looking at it when you were speaking are saying, well, what is the actual threat to me and my family from a far right extremist? Surely the big threat is Islamist extremism.
Well, as we started this conversation, absolutely. When you look at numbers in terms of the plots foiled, etc., Islamism is the number one threat still, and you've seen the results of when terrorists get through the net and manage to evade the security services. However, if you want to see what the threat from the far right is, it's all available public. It's all public information. Just type in terror plots thwarted in the last say 4 years, and you will get a whole litany of far right terror threats as well that have been stopped. Now, the merciful thing is that very few of them have got through and succeeded so far. However, as we all know, it only takes one such atrocity to happen, and then everyone knows about it as an issue. And it's a mistake to think, by the way, that, they're not going to come after people like me. That's not, firstly, you might be in the wrong place at the wrong time and get caught up in something. Secondly, we don't want to see violent attacks against anyone in this country or hatred against anyone in this country, because it damages our collective social cohesion. And it's not something that we should be blasé about. There is a real issue of hatred from the far right. Like I said, it's not at the same level as radical Islam, but the data is there and the evidence is there of some pretty nutty things that have been happening and some dangerous activities.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you're right. And we will never hear of some of the attacks, both Islamist and far right, etc., that are thwarted. That's the nature of the beast, as it were. Incredibly grateful for the work that our security services do. Just very quickly, I'm so sorry, but very quickly, do you think that what's going on in the Channel potentially poses a security risk in terms of Islamism coming into the UK or not?
Well, any situation where you don't know the identity of people coming into this country is potentially a security issue. Yes, of course, it could be Islamism that's the issue. We've also had, sort of other suggestions of infiltration, say by Russian forces, others. It's a very difficult case if you don't have control of your borders and know who exactly is coming in here and who is settling and who is not, to work out what your security issues are. So absolutely, just from a basic level, not knowing who's coming, illegal migrants trying to get into this country by whatever means, absolutely potentially increases the terrorist threat.
Alan, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. As always, fast becoming a regular. You're on GB News more than I am at the minute, actually. Alan Mendes, thank you very much, of the Average Accent Society. Right, OK, after the break. Interest rates are set to rise today in a bid to tackle inflation. Is enough being done to tackle the cost of living crisis as goods, utilities, tax, take your pick, fuel, gas, etc., continues to squeeze the nation? But before that, here's a look at this morning's news.
Thank you, Patrick. It's 10:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. There are renewed calls for the government to impose a windfall tax on energy companies after oil giant Shell reported a big increase in profits. The company revealed record first-quarter profits of £7.2 billion, triple the amount it made in the same quarter last year. Surging oil and gas prices have helped offset the cost of boycotting Russian supplies. Interest rates are expected to increase to their highest in 13 years when the Bank of England announces its decision this lunchtime. The base rate is set to go from 0.75% to 1% as the bank tries to bring rising inflation under control. The Prime Minister took his dog Dylan with him as he cast his vote for the local elections this morning. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer also voted alongside his wife. Voters are choosing local representatives in England, Scotland and Wales, and there will also be an election for the Northern Ireland Assembly. In Ukraine, more than 300 civilians have been evacuated from the Azov-style steelworks in Mariupol to the relative safety of Zaporizhia. President Zelensky is asking the UN to help ensure the safe passage of a further 200, including women and children, still trapped inside the besieged port city. The UK and Japan will agree a new landmark defence deal as the Prime Minister hosts his Japanese counterpart in London today. It's Fumio Kishida's first official visit to the UK. The pact will allow British and Japanese forces to deploy together to carry out joint exercises and disaster relief. We head into space next. A warning, some of this footage does contain flashing images.
And I relinquish control of command of the space station to you. I accept command.
NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn's handed control of the International Space Station to Russian cosmonaut Oleg Artemyev. The Endurance crew said their farewells before undocking the Dragon Hatch capsule from the ISS. The long-duration team, 3 Americans and a German, are returning to Earth after 6 months in space. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. It's back to Mercy and Patrick in just a moment with To The Point.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. It's 10:38. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Moroki on GB News, live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, now, Buckingham Palace has just announced that the Queen will not attend any garden parties this year, but will instead be represented by other members of the royal family. That's just coming out over the last few minutes. This is, of course, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee year, with many events planned to mark the occasion. So quite big news coming out there. But we can now be joined by Cameron Walker, who's our royal correspondent. Cameron, what's going on here?
Well, quite, yes. Garden parties are a big annual tradition for the royal family. It's their chance to meet ordinary members of the public, British citizens who've done good work for their communities, and they're invited to these garden parties at either Buckingham Palace in London or at Holyrood House in Edinburgh in Scotland. The last couple of years, they haven't happened because of the pandemic. So this year was meant to be, you know, the big reprise of the garden parties and the celebration of British people. But Buckingham Palace, as you said in the last few minutes, has said that Her Majesty will not be attending any of them. Usually she does attend at least one. But I think this is just another in a long list of engagements which Her Majesty has missed. In March, the Commonwealth Service, she missed a big annual service that would have been important to her. And then last month, the annual Maundy service, just before the Easter weekend, she also didn't attend. Prince Charles and Camilla attended in her place. And the big question is, of course, on Tuesday, we've got the state opening of Parliament, and Buckingham Palace have not yet confirmed whether or not she's going to be reading the speech.
No, exactly. And although, to be fair, not to make light of this, I now have something in common with the Queen, because I also won't be attending any garden parties this summer. But no, but seriously, I do wonder, Cara, I know this is all pure speculation, but whether or not a lot of this is down to the fact she obviously doesn't want to appear to be seen in like a wheelchair or something like that. She's obviously got very high standards of what she wants to appear like. Should we be reading too much into this? Do we think fit and well? It's just appearances more than anything?
Yeah, well, from speaking to my sources and from my understanding, I understand there's no specific illness any of us needs to be worried about. But, you know, she's 96. She's going to have mobility issues. She's used a walking stick on a number of occasions. But last week, in those photographs with her and the Swiss president, she did an in-person engagement at Windsor Castle. She didn't have it. So I think it's a question of how she's going to be feeling on the day. And as Buckingham Palace, someone I was speaking to last month about the Maundy service, she wanted to make sure that everyone knew that she was or wasn't going to be attending ahead of time, so there wasn't either a massive disappointment on the day or the headline turned into the Queen isn't attending rather than overshadowing the event itself. Exactly. So I think it's more of a forward planning thing rather than a health concern.
Good stuff. Cameron, look, thank you so much, as always. Cameron Walker there, our royal reporter, giving you the very latest. Yes, and I think as well, look, it's important to say, I don't know about you, Messi, but for me personally, anyway, you know, I wouldn't care whether or not the Queen was in a wheelchair or whatever. I can understand, obviously, she's got standards she wants to uphold, but I'd just like to see it. But you know.
Yeah, I know, but at the same time, I think, you know, as Cameron just said that, she is 96 years old. She's just turned 96. She's outlived the average life expectancy. I know, obviously, she has top class healthcare and everything, and always has, but she is incredibly old, and I think, you know, her doing these royal engagements and all of that, there is a fitting time for her to roll back on all of that and just, you know, look after herself and her own health. So I think that's the most important thing, really, and if it means we won't see her as much,
she's done enough for us, hasn't she, over the course of her life. So, you know, there we go. But OK, moving on from this now. The Bank of England is expected to increase its base interest rate to 1%, the highest level in 13 years, in a bid to tackle inflation, as many people up and down the country are feeling the pinch.
Yes, but what does that mean exactly for you, our viewers and listeners at home? Well, our reporter, Rosie Wright, is out and about. Rosie, talking to people about how they'll be affected. Rosie, good morning. What are people saying about this rise in interest rates?
Well, we know that the cost of living is soaring, and yesterday we were talking about research from Nationwide that said quite a lot of us are putting off buying a house. Why? Because it's really difficult to save for that deposit. The big difference when it comes to mortgages particularly will kick in today. 12 o'clock, the Bank of England are looking at changing their interest rate, and it's anticipated that it's going to go up to 1%. That would be, as you just said there, Patrick, the highest in 13 years. So what impact is that going to have on the housing market? Well, let's speak now to James Baring, who's a partner at Felicity J at Law. Just tell us, what do you think, if the interest rate rises, what's that going to do to the property market?
Well, I believe it will benefit sellers, actually, because there'll be a stronger need for buyers to secure a property, and more importantly, in a way, well, not more importantly, but secure a decent fixed-rate mortgage.
So you think it's actually positive for those selling because people will quickly want to get and lock in a rate. Is that because you anticipate interest rates are going to go up?
I believe, and this has been supported by research I've done, that interest rates will continue to go up through the year, maybe anything from maybe to 2% to maybe even 3.5%. I mean, that's what's been prophesied by economists. And so it is important. You know, during the term of a mortgage and during the term of a fixed rate, you can make a lot of saving if you get a low fixed rate mortgage now, which you can do. You can do it through our company, Just Mortgages. They're very good. And even if you end up paying a little bit more for your property now, it's worth doing the maths, basically, to see how that evens out.
You're anticipating, for the people who can afford it, they're going to try and get a mortgage now.
Yeah.
There is another side of this story, though, the increasing cost of living. Lots of people can't get that deposit together.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. I mean, we've had, across the country, there's been record prices achieved February and March. It slowed down a little bit in April, and that, I think, partly because of the cost of living going up, utilities, petrol, food, you know, they've all increased. I think there will come a point, though, if interest rates continue to go up this year, which they will, and maybe even next year, there will come a point there where interest rates get to a level which will start biting into people's disposable income, if you like. So that could affect prices. So sell now, buy now.
And is there any real concern that people who are on variable rate mortgages are going to get to a point where it becomes unaffordable?
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. But I mean, we have seen it before. I mean, if you have to be at least 50 now to have lived through a period when interest rates were very, very high, you know, in 1980s, 1990s. So a lot of people who are buying and selling now, they haven't lived in a market, if you like, that's seen those very high interest rates. Hopefully, I don't think we'll see that, but there will be more increases, I'm sure. So it comes back to get a good fixed rate now, and hopefully it'll save money in the long term.
James, thank you very much for speaking to us
Thank
across the day. I'm looking at the different variables associated with not only the changing interest rate, but that teamed on top of the rising cost of living to see if you're selling, if you're buying, how that might impact you. And as we're hearing, for lots of people, they can't afford to buy at all.
Yes, Rosie, thank you very much. Lots of people obviously can't afford to buy right now, can they? And lots of people are struggling to even feed themselves and heat their rental homes, let alone think about buying. So a dire situation.
Well, the deposit's a big issue as well, isn't it? It's not just about the current cost of property.
To me,
it's saving up for that deposit as well.
Yeah, to me, deposits don't really make sense because we've spoken about this before. You could be renting for, 10, 20 odd years, always paying your rent on time for 20 years. And then you don't have a deposit and the bank's like, oh, sorry, we can't trust you to pay your rent or to lend you this money because we don't trust you to pay it back. And I always think, well, there should be a way to sort of use your rental history as a way to show, you're a reliable lendee.
I mean, a friend of mine who thankfully has bought now, bless him, he's up in Aberdeen actually, and he nearly all fell through for him because apparently when he was at university there was like one unpaid electric. So he'd moved out of his student house, so he didn't see the letter. And that nearly cost him his entire credit rating. You think, years and years and years of paying his rent on time, having a good income and a good salary, one missed electricity payment that he wasn't aware of.
Lots of young people do make that mistake. I'm not checking their credit rating often enough. Do you check yours?
No.
When was the last time you checked your credit rating?
Look, I'm sure mine's absolutely spot on.
Right,
yes.
OK.
Well, talking of people who are absolutely spot on, actress Amber Heard has told a court that Johnny Depp apparently repeatedly struck her during drug and alcohol-fuelled rages that she claims turned her ex-husband into an awful thing.
Yes, well, she took the witness stand on week 4 of the trial yesterday, and Ms Heard alleged that a pattern of violence began in 2012. Mr Depp is suing Ms Heard over a story she wrote in which she described herself as a domestic abuse victim, while the A-list defamation trial has captivated press and social media and Hollywood with dozens of fans seen on several occasions outside of the courthouse, many of whom are supporting Johnny Depp. Well, in his testimony, Johnny Depp denied any wrongdoing.
Yeah, well, joining us now to discuss this further is showbiz reporter Stephanie Tacchi. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Tacchi, sorry, Stephanie, that was my fault completely. I'm like Ron Burgundy, I will read anything on the auto cue, no matter whether or not I know it's wrong. So apologies about that, that's my fault entirely. Interesting one, I've been gripped. Cheers. I've been gripped for this, I've been gripped by it, because you see all these clips coming out, especially on Twitter, right? So what's the latest then?
So the latest, for 3 weeks, Johnny Depp has had his say on this case. And, on both sides of the court, it hasn't made Johnny look good because he's been painted as a domestic violence abuser. There's been some awful footage that's come out of him, drunk, high, recorded messages of him abusing Amber. But after 3 weeks now, Amber Heard is finally having her say. So she went on stage on court yesterday to explain what's happened during their relationship. And she spoke for the first time when Johnny Depp hit her. She said that she was making fun of a tattoo that he had, which was dedicated to his ex-actress girlfriend, Winona Ryder. And he slapped her 3 times. And she said after she got hit for the first time by Johnny, it changed her life forever.
Yeah, I have to say, though, a lot of stuff I'm seeing online is quite critical of Amber Heard. You know, I don't know, I haven't followed the case exactly, but people are saying she seems disingenuous. She seems like she very much was a part of the domestic abuse and that she was also party to sort of perpetrating domestic abuse on him. What would you respond to claims that have been made around that?
You know, I actually do agree with that, actually. From following this case, it seems like there's been claims with Johnny himself where he says he's been a victim of domestic abuse. And not last week, there was a video recording that came out of Amber saying, nobody's going to believe you, Johnny, if you came out and said that you were actually...
So we've just lost Stephanie there. That's all right, but I mean, this type of thing that a lot of people can get involved with. GBViews, GBNews.uk. Obviously, we have to be a bit careful. I mean, it's a defamation trial, so by definition, we have to be a bit careful with it. But it is interesting because I'm seeing a lot of these clips. So I think it's fascinating, isn't it? There's always two sides to every story, right? There are always two sides, and I'm absolutely not for 1 second certainly not making light of any kind of domestic abuse. In my opinion on this trial is there's no winners here. There's absolutely no winners.
What this has revealed, I think, is that they were both very toxic people for each other to be in a relationship with each other. They seem incredibly like two damaged individuals who have lots of issues. So clearly they just should never have been in a relationship together. They've caused each other irreparable damage to their own reputations and to their mental health, it seems.
And it's to be honest, you talk about airing your dirty laundry in public as well. Look, you know, I can understand various elements of it, of course, and I do get that, and I do get why if somebody feels wrong, they would want to get some form of justice. There's no doubt about that. But this kind of stuff is just degrading, isn't it? Really. And at the end of the day, you can, especially when you pay the kind of money that both of these lot are for lawyers. Goodness me, I mean, you can throw enough mud at the wall to, frankly, it's like mutually assured destruction, isn't it?
Really? It is. But now let's move on to some other stories that you may have missed. This one cracked me up a little bit, I have to say. If you thought the expenses scandal from 2009 in Britain was awfully embarrassing for our MPs here, well, get this, a leading member of the French Parliament in President Macron's party has been forced to resign after it was revealed she was buying lingerie and other clothes on her parliamentary expenses.
Well, I don't know, maybe it helped her get votes, I suppose, I don't know. Coralie Dubost is reported to have charged 2,000 euros a month for underwear. That's more than I spend on rent, right? 2,000 euros a month for the underwear and other fashion items as well. She's also accused by an ethics investigation into her parliamentary activities of asking her aides to take care of her dry cleaning. I imagine there was a lot of it. Her dry cleaning and her shoe repairs.
Yeah.
I mean,
I hope they weren't having to dry clean her underwear. But
bold,
she said she was misled. Well, this is her defence. She said she was misled about what she was allowed to charge to her over €5,000 personal expenses account. So she was saying it was a misunderstanding. Obviously makes the duck house thing look a bit innocent, doesn't it? Because in 2009, if you remember, the duck house, one of our MPs bought a duck house and put it on his expenses.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, she has issued a statement and she says there's nothing wrong with it. Anyway, OK, so a Virgin Atlantic flight, moving on. A Virgin Atlantic flight from London to New York was forced to make a U-turn just 40 minutes into its flight. Not because of weather conditions or a rowdy passenger, no, but because the co-pilot admitted that he'd not completed his pilot training.
Yes. Well, apparently the first officer revealed to the captain, so this is the co-pilot, that he had not yet passed his final flying test, which is needed to actually fly with Virgin Airlines. This is their policy, which was a slight problem, given that his literal role on the flight was taking care of safety on the flight.
You just wonder how this actually managed to happen, really. Obviously, as someone who landed an aeroplane.
Yes.
I did land an aeroplane. I think we can all agree. We all saw it. So I'm uniquely placed to discuss this, and I can confirm that safety is paramount in the cockpit. It really is. Yeah.
Well, look, Virgin had said it was a rostering error. The rotors were messed up, they said, and that the co-pilot was replaced after the U-turn with a pilot who fully complied with their protocols. And also, it must be said that the aviation authorities, the civil aviation authority, I think they said he was actually a qualified pilot, but to fly with Virgin, you have to have passed a series number of tests, and he hadn't passed those. So it's not as unsafe as it seems.
We seem to have moved on from the days of drunk pilots. I can remember there being a flurry of stories about pilots who were turning up over the limit, as it were. But apparently we don't seem to see that anymore. But there we go, good. Now, a gorilla named Amer is having his...
I think it's Amari.
I don't know. He's having his screen time cut. Look, he's talking about gorilla, isn't he? He's not going to sue me, is he? Screen time cut after he became so addicted to his smartphone, he didn't realise when another gorilla charged at him.
Wow. Well, the issue started when zoogoers would show the animal countless numbers of videos through the glass divider, but the problem became so bad. Zoo staff had restricted the public from getting too close to the glass, while Stephen Ross, who's the director of the Zoo Centre for the Study of Conservation of Apes, said during development, male gorillas will often get aggressive with each other and play fight to establish dominance and hierarchy, while if Amari gets too distracted by people's phones, he'll miss out on that interaction and will have lower social standing.
Yeah. I just quite
too much screen time is emasculating him. That's what's happening.
That is what's happening.
Yeah.
I quite like the idea of him just relentlessly playing Angry Birds, or going on Twitter and just venting. You know?
Yeah.
I quite like that. Anyway, good luck to you, Maurice. That's why I say. Well, look, Amer. Yeah, there's a big French gorilla. Anyway, right. Keep all your thoughts coming in to us on emails. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after this very short break. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Dry for many today with sunny spells, but there will be still some rain in the far northwest, mainly northern and western parts of Scotland, because of a number of weather fronts which are just toppling in over an area of high pressure. However, high pressure really here to stay for the next few days. That's going to lead to a lot of fine and dry weather, whilst these weather fronts will occasionally bring rain, mainly to the northern half of the UK. So a few showers for northern England, perhaps 1 or 2 showers developing over the West Midlands and parts of Wales into the afternoon. Otherwise, a lot of fine, dry weather for England and Wales, sunny spells in places, some thicker cloud at times for the Midlands. And with the sunny spells, temperatures reaching 22, perhaps 23 Celsius in the southeast. Cooler there towards the northwest, mid-teens. And for Scotland and Northern Ireland, a cloudy day with spells of rain for the north and west of Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain turn more persistent and heavy at times through the night. Also, they'll start to sink further south into the rest of Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. 12 Celsius for Glasgow, Belfast, 8 for Birmingham, 10 for London. So a relatively mild start to Friday, but plenty of dry weather for England and Wales at least, with some sunshine first thing. However, cloud and rain is slowly sinking south. It arrives into northern England, North Wales by the afternoon, and it will be heavy and persistent, particularly over, say, Snowdonia and the Lake District. Feeling unpleasant under that rain, 15, 16 Celsius, 22 or even 23 or 24 for London, cooler for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but brighter skies follow with some showers also for northern and western Scotland, and particularly they die away through the night on Friday, whilst our area of cloud and rain sinks south, peters out as high pressure builds, and that high pressure will lead to a lot of fine and dry weather through the weekend. Bye-bye.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, but to the point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Muroki on your TV, radio and online. We're here with you all the way through until midday. Action-packed show for you today. The biggest stories, loads of discussion, but of course, crucially, we're not allowed to pass comment on politics, just in case we influence you with our power.
Well, make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We'll get to those very shortly, but first, here's the latest news with Rhiannon.
Thank you, Mercy. 11 o'clock. Here are your top stories from the GB newsroom. There are renewed calls for the government to impose a windfall tax on energy companies after oil giant Shell reported a big increase in profits. The company revealed record first quarter results of £7.2 billion, triple the amount it made in the same quarter last year. It joins rival BP in posting better than expected profits for the first 3 months of 2022. Surging oil and gas prices have helped offset the cost of boycotting Russian supplies. Polling stations are open across the UK as millions of voters take part in the local elections today. The Prime Minister took his dog Dylan with him as he cast his vote this morning. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer's also voted alongside his wife. Voters are choosing local representatives in England, Scotland and Wales, and there'll also be an election for the Northern Ireland Assembly. Polling stations will close at 10 p.m. and most results should be known by Friday evening. Interest rates are expected to rise to their highest in 13 years when the Bank of England announces its decision this lunchtime. The base rate is set to go from 0.75% to 1% as the bank tries to bring rising inflation under control. Matt Dronfield's head of Debt-Free London. He says inquiries have soared 250% since this time last year.
Many people think that you go into debt because you've splurged on a credit card or you've overspent on the weekend and not realise it. That's really not the situation whatsoever. Debt doesn't discriminate. We're all facing a cost of living crisis with the cost of your mortgage maybe going up later today, depending on the Bank of England's announcement, your rent going up, your food going up. All these are essential costs that you can't control, and you're left with nothing at the end of the month.
In Ukraine, the governor of the eastern city of Luhansk says 5 civilians have been killed in shelling in the last 24 hours. A further 25 civilians are reported to have been hurt in a Russian missile strike in Kramatorsk in Donetsk. The city's mayor says a school and kindergarten were damaged in the attack. Meanwhile, in Mariupol, another 300 civilians have been evacuated from the Azov-style steelworks to the relative safety of Zaporizhia. President Zelensky is asking the UN to help ensure the safe passage of a further 200, including women and children, still trapped inside the besieged port city. Former British Army commander and chairman of the Cobra intelligence group, Colonel Richard Kemp, says Russia's determined to crush the remaining resistance there.
I think they will use, maybe, as we're hearing already today, increasing ferocity to clear them out of there, and it probably won't take much longer. I've heard talk of Russians considering flooding the cellars and the chambers that they're hiding in order to either drown them or flush them out, and I think that's quite a likely possibility if they haven't already done it.
The UK is providing £45 million in funding to help the most vulnerable in Ukraine. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says the money will go to women and children who face increased risk of sexual violence and exploitation. The UN estimates nearly 16 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance in the country. The UK and Japan will agree on a new landmark defence deal when the Prime Minister hosts his Japanese counterpart in London today. It's Fumio Kishida's first official visit to the UK. The pact will allow British and Japanese forces to deploy together to carry out joint exercises and disaster relief. Actress Amber Heard has told a court she was heartbroken the first time her ex-husband Johnny Depp hit her, as she tearfully described the alleged incident that she says changed her life. Johnny Depp is suing Ms. Heard for libel over a 2018 Washington Post article, which his lawyers say falsely implies he physically and sexually abused her while they were together. In his testimony, Mr. Depp denied any wrongdoing. The trial continues. Buckingham Palace says the Queen will miss the annual Royal Garden Party season. The monarch will instead be represented by other members of the royal family at the events. Her Majesty has mobility issues and has missed a number of engagements this year, but she continues to carry out virtual appearances and other duties. We head into space next. A warning though, some of this footage does contain flashing images.
And I relinquish control of command of the space station to you.
I accept command.
NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn has handed control of the International Space Station to Russian cosmonaut Oleg Artemyev. The Endurance crew said their farewells before undocking the Dragon hatch capsule from the ISS. The long-duration team, 3 Americans and a German, are returning to Earth after 6 months in space. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. Let's return to Patrick and Mercy with To The Point.
A very good morning. It's 11:06 and this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. Why do you always look like you're about to laugh?
Because we always have so much fun in the advert breaks, you know, and also I get to read your emails and I get to read the ones that I'm not allowed to read out
There's
on air.
some funny ones, I have
absolute
to
corkers
admit.
in here, I must say, yeah. But no. Right, OK, let's do the job. So, it's the 10th week of Russia's attack on Ukraine, and as the devastation continues and economic sanctions tighten, we'll be asking a Russia expert if anything Russia stands to gain from this war.
Yes, and a comedian, Dave Chappelle, was attacked at a comedy gig while filming a Netflix special. You might have seen this footage. We'll ask 2 British comedians whether they feel safe to make jokes anymore or whether they feel that they'll be next.
Can you imagine?
Because people don't like free speech, do they?
Going to a comedy gig and attacking the comedian.
I know,
mean,
it's bizarre. He was armed with, I think, a replica gun as well, which was quite scary. Well, that's in our free speech debate coming up anyway.
Yes, indeed. And finally, GB News presenter and, of course, lover of British coastlines, Neil Oliver, will join us to discuss exactly what is happening to our beloved coast as we hear report after report of waste, litter and sewage being poured into our seas. And yes, believe it or not, the monitoring group for the amount of sewage in our seas is called Top of the Poops.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. I didn't do it. It's not my fault. It's true.
Anyway, we had a good laugh about that the other day. We have all of that coming up, of course, and much more as well across the programme. Get in touch with your views, as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now we're entering the 10th week of Russia's attack on Ukraine with no end in sight to the death and destruction it has wreaked upon the region. In fact, Western officials are speculating that Russian President Vladimir Putin could use the May the 9th VE Day anniversary to drum up extra support and even announce a further escalation of military action.
Yeah, but as Russian citizens continue to be banned from public events, as economic sanctions tighten as well, as international condemnation escalates and Russian troops continue to be decimated by Ukrainian resistance, what exactly is Putin's endgame here?
Yes, well, here to help us unpick this topic is Keir Giles, Russia expert at Chatham House, which is a think tank also known as the Royal Institute of International Affairs. Good morning. Thanks for coming on to join us and speak about this. What do you think? You know, that question we pose. What is Putin's endgame here? Because clearly this is not going as he planned.
Well, quite. And of course, that's been the situation since about day 5 of Russia's war on Ukraine. Ever since then, it's been a question of what exactly can Russia salvage from this, and will they present it to themselves as a success? But you made a really important point just now. You said it's Western analysts that are expecting President Putin to make some big announcement on 9th of May. It's not the Russians that are gearing up for this. There's nothing coming from Russia to say that this is going to be anything more than an ordinary 9th of May routine parade. Just unfortunately for them, it's not being held in Kiev. But the range of what President Putin could say on that day is pretty broad. We've heard people speculating that he will announce victory and say that the operation is over. We've heard people saying the exact opposite, that he will say this is no longer a special military operation, as the Russians call it. It's actually a war, and therefore we're going to mobilize the whole country. And in between that, of course, you've got a whole load of different options for what President Putin could do to save face on this really important day in the Russian calendar when they commemorate all the Soviet mythology of the Second World War.
Yeah, well, hit us with some of those options then, because I suppose one of the options would be to solidify his approach and, I don't know, just outright go nuts in Ukraine, I suppose. Another one would be to claim that they've secured something in the Donbass and retreat. What do you think? What do you think these options are?
Well, one option that does look pretty attractive if you're looking at this from the outside is look at Russia's initial objective, what they said, the denazification of Ukraine, which, of course, is nonsense and you look at it objectively, and especially in the context of Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov now saying that it's actually the Jews that are the worst Nazis and has been pilloried for that worldwide. But this may explain some of the stepping up of the assaults in Mariupol that you heard about in the news broadcast, because Mariupol, of course, is the base, the headquarters of the Azov brigade, which a lot of Russian propagandists worldwide claim is a far-right organization and neo-Nazis. So if they claim that they have successfully, finally captured the entirety of Mariupol, that's a kind of marker, a kind of peg that they can use to claim that they have achieved their victory, achieved their aims.
Can you talk to me a bit about this Azov brigade, is it called, I think? Because I've been hearing a lot about this and I've not really been able to get to the bottom of it. I hope you can clear it up. Has it got links to Nazism then, this particular unit?
Well, you're right, it's a murky story, and that's one of the reasons why this idea that it is effectively a bunch of Nazis has reached so much penetration around the world. Now, if you look at the initial history of that group, along with a whole lot of other volunteer defense groups that were set up in Russia's initial assault on Ukraine in 2014, yes, at the time it did seem to have some fairly dodgy far-right links, but since then, it's been absorbed into the national defense structures of Ukraine. It's been regularized. It's got a far more broader base of support and a broader base of people it recruits from. So these old stereotypes of effectively these being Nazis which are banded together to resist Russia is way out of date.
Yeah, and we spoke to a Ukrainian MP earlier, and we noticed she was sat in front of a EU flag, which we found interesting because she had, well, Patrick found it annoying, which she hasn't done before. But what do you make of how the EU has been reacting to this over the last week or so? We know they're saying they're going to ban Russian exports, they're going to deliver more aid to support Ukraine. What do you think is going on there?
Well, first of all, sitting in front of an EU flag is something that we've seen before. This is exactly what the Georgian president in 2008, when Georgia was under attack by Russia, did in order to try to appeal to Europe, even though Georgia, just like Ukraine, had really no relationship with the EU that would justify putting that flag out. But the EU, of course, is being dragged along, and its major partners, particularly Germany, are still in the process of being shamed and bullied into doing the right thing for Ukraine. Primarily at this stage, of course, weaning themselves off Russian energy in order that they don't undermine the effect of the international sanctions on Russia by continuing to pour billions of dollars and rubles into Russia's foreign currency reserves. So as soon as that hurdle is overcome, and then as soon as you do cut off that flow of income towards Russia, the pressure on Moscow increases greatly.
But we're sorry, I forget exactly the number of days now. So is it day 70 or something like that, I think, of the Russian invasion? So 70 days into it, eventually, the European Union has decided to stop funding Putin.
Well, if only it had actually decided that fully now. No, it's going to be a long process, and in some respect it's understandable, but the reluctance to actually start the process in the first place, and also the reluctance to do what's necessary to aid Ukraine in fighting this war, which, let's not forget, is on behalf of Europe. This is just the front line of the bigger conflict between Russia seeking to reconquer its former territories and Europe seeking to defend rule of law and democracy. The fact that Germany has to be nudged and pushed and pulled into providing anything other than field hospitals and helmets is shameful. Unfortunately,
given that, yeah, thank you. It is. And sorry, I know I apologise everyone for this, but I am genuinely angry about this. And I know people go on about, don't bring up the war, and so, but especially given Germany's history, you would have thought now that they've got an opportunity here to actually do something. And I know it's not as black and white as that, but it is an issue, right? And I can't help but feel that history will not remember various European nations particularly well in this, and I don't see what the excuse is. Do you?
Well, Germany, like Russia, has suffered psychological trauma and is now having its behaviour influenced by what's happened in the past. It's just they've been influenced in opposite directions. Russia's trying to reclaim the empire that it thought it lost at the end of the Cold War unjustly. Germany, of course, is the opposite, trying to do anything possible to avoid conflict, to avoid confrontation, and claiming as a result that other NATO nations are not supporting Ukraine because they're terrified of a confrontation with Russia. Whereas, in fact, it is Germany that is self-deterring as a result of its own development of its political system after the Second World War.
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to the day when because it's coming. Fingers crossed the Ukrainians do send the Russians packing, but the day that Ursula von der Leyen and the likes of them claim a glorious victory over Russia, I think I'll be there with the receipts, I think. But look, Keir, thank you very, very much. It's great to have you on the show. You're becoming a regular and deservedly so. You're top drawer, so thank you very much, Keir Giles there. Oh, Chatham House.
Joining us from my part of the world, Northamptonshire.
Yeah, and in front of what looks like a very impressive library.
Yes. Indeed. Well, now let's go to Tom Harwood, our political correspondent, who joins us as well to give us another angle to all of this. Tom, what's your analysis of what's been happening with this war over the last few days? Day 71, I think it is now.
Yes, it seems to have been a much more protracted conflict than many people were expecting at the beginning. At the start of this conflict, people were saying that Russia would absolutely walk it. Many military analysts were thinking that Ukraine would fold pretty quickly, and that has been exactly the opposite of what has happened. The tenacity of the Ukrainian people and armed forces has been nothing short of remarkable, defying all expectations. And, of course, the United Kingdom has played a very key role in supplying not only military hardware, but also the training of those troops, making the Ukrainian army a very different beast to what it was back in 2014. But there's more military cooperation going on in the world now as well. As we speak, the Japanese Prime Minister has arrived in number 10 Downing Street, and there is a flyover of RAF planes above the street to welcome him to the United Kingdom. This is all about a new defence partnership between the United Kingdom and Japan, two great island nations on opposite sides of the world, two great democracies, and indeed two of the largest economies in the world too, coming together in shared values of not only economic values but defence as well.
Is there a risk here of a sort of cyclical thing where what Russia's doing will bolster NATO and will bolster that alliance, and then in turn that will bolster Russia's response and aggressiveness towards NATO countries, and then in turn that will further bolster NATO? I mean, where do you think that relationship between NATO and Russia is going to be at the end of all of this? Hopefully the end will be soon, but where will that leave everybody?
Well, I think beyond NATO, and NATO clearly has become much more important in the last year or so, it's become much more relevant, and so many members are now finally committing to what they had committed to in writing, if not in practice, with regard to spending 2% of their GDP or more on defence. But it's also not just those NATO countries. but countries elsewhere in the world that are aligning with NATO. We're sort of seeing this great new dividing line between the free world and the unfree world. And countries like Australia, like Japan, like South Korea are very key partners of that new alliance. And I think that's what some of the meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister is about today. It also comes, of course, at the same time as the UK is negotiating accession to the CPTPP. Now, that's the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, a trade area, or a huge expansive trade area around the Pacific, which would open our markets to some pretty exciting economic opportunities as well. This is cooperation that is showing that the Western world, the free world, really does still have it.
Tom, thank you very much. Expertly done as always. What's that acronym again?
The CPTPP.
Good stuff.
It used to be the TPP until America pulled out of it, collapsed the whole negotiations. They had to rebrand it as the CPTPP for it to go ahead.
CPTPP.
What this guy doesn't know is not worth knowing. Anyway, Tom, thank you very much, mate. Cheers. Tom Harwood there, our political correspondent today, talking about Russia and stuff. Anyway, after the break. Let's do some views. Okay, because we've had some cracking ones, actually, here. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Chrissy's been in touch. Off topic, Chrissy says, off topic. But why do most guests have books behind them? Is it to make people think that they're more intelligent than they are? Yes.
Yes, basically. That is literally the only reason. I think some people have fake bookshelves, as you were saying, weren't you, as well?
So you can pay companies, OK, they will say to you, what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to come across as? And you go, if you want to be well-travelled. They'll make you a bookcase with, like, books about travel or geography, or, whatever. If you want to seem like an academic, they'll do something really dull or all this kind of stuff, or sportsy, that kind of thing. But you can pay for a fake bookshelf, because this was born out of the lockdown when everyone was doing things on Zoom.
Yeah.
Right? It may shock you to know that I would have no books behind me when I do.
Well, you can just... I feel like it would be cheaper to just get a green screen and then sort of put a fake bookshelf graphic behind you. I mean, that's if you really want to be pretentious, but anyway.
I agree, yes. Look, loads of you getting in touch as well about Ukraine, basically just saying, look, obviously you feel for the people that are over there. Lots of compliments to our last guest, Kid Giles, as well. And there's an interesting one here, just very quickly. We said here, there we go, this one, saying that basically, look, says, you know what, and I can't use this word, you know what annoys him, and this is Simon, I won't read full name out, Simon, but he says, we're in a cost of living crisis, and our government are sending millions and millions to Ukraine and other countries. He says, we're struggling here. He says that he cares about this country more. And it's an interesting view, that, I think. I can understand why there's geopolitics at play, but I don't think you'll be alone in that view, Simon.
Yes, it certainly makes sense. It's a very legitimate view, I think. But after the break, Dave Chappelle, the comedian, was attacked on stage for his jokes about trans people just a day or two ago. We asked two comedians what their reactions are and whether free speech is doomed.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Good morning, everyone. It's 11:25, I believe. And this is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Meraki on GB News, live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, now comedian Dave Chappelle, who many of you might have heard of, he's quite controversial, was attacked on stage yesterday by a man holding a replica gun with a knife blade on Tuesday.
Yeah, well, Chappelle was performing at the Hollywood Bowl for the Netflix Is a Joke festival before he was charged at by a 23-year-old called Isaiah Lee.
Yeah, well, he's since been arrested by the LAPD for assault with a deadly weapon. And after the attack, Chappelle was joined on stage by fellow comic Chris Rock, who you remember was slapped by Will Smith on stage in the Oscars in March, after a joke about his wife.
What's she called again?
Jada Pinkett.
Keep that name out of your mouth.
God, I fell right into that one. Chappelle himself has come under fire for his jokes in the past, especially about transgender people. Well, after the attack, he even joked that this attacker was a trans man. But is it safe to make jokes anymore? And I don't know if you saw the footage of the man after being wheeled off into an ambulance. His arm was the wrong way round, let's put it that way.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's what you get, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. Well, joining us to discuss more is comedian Patrick. Do we have two comedians?
Yes,
we do have two comedians, two for the price of one.
We're double funny.
Two comedians, Patrick Monaghan down the line, as you can see or hear, and Jonathan Cogan in the studio. Thank you both for joining us. Let's start with you. What do you make about what happened yesterday? Do you think, he made light of the situation, didn't he? He's a comedian. But do you think it's safe to actually have more controversial views on stage anymore?
Well, I think what happened was definitely something of a rarity. That's not a regular occurrence, certainly not by my experience. I think it was completely unjustified how he attacked him. I feel bad for the guy. He's clearly mentally deranged, and he was a homeless dude and he's on medication and stuff, but he got the absolute daylights kicked out of him, and I think that kind of sent a message for people who think they can attack comedians. So,
I mean, I think that's what, like I said, that's kind of what you get, isn't it? Although obviously, look, if he is unwell or whatever, then you do. I'll say wish him well in a way. Patrick, I'm going to throw over to you now. I've been banned from asking you what's the most offensive joke you can possibly tell on national television, and I think rightly so. But have you ever been attacked on stage?
Oh, yeah, listen, I've been doing comedy for years, and I remember back in the day, probably 10, 15 years ago, people used to throw pint glasses at you, and that was part of the training. When you're doing gigs, they weren't happy with it, but they did it in a half sort of fun way. I mean, what has happened over like yesterday and over obviously with Chris Rock and Will Smith as well, it has got too surreal. I mean, we've got to the point where you couldn't make this up, where you actually get on stage to physically attack someone is ridiculous. People need to understand, as comedians, our job is to entertain you. You've come to see us live because we want to make you happy. It's hard enough as a comedian remembering your routines, talking about topical stuff, talking about material, as opposed to also having to learn how to duck, swing, avoid a punch, avoid a kick. It's hard enough being a comic as it is. We've got enough going on. We've got to need you on stage as well.
Yeah, well, I think Dave Chappelle did duck it quite well, actually. He was lunged at, and he did manage to just about duck
He's
it.
a cool guy,
Although I think he did fall to the floor. Jonathan, I do want to ask you this. How far is too far for a joke? Because that's the crux of this. Some people think some jokes are too far. Is there such a thing as a joke going too far if people are still laughing?
Well, I think ultimately that is a subjective thing. People make jokes that I can find them offensive, but they are just sat there jokes. I don't have to enjoy them. I don't have to pay to see that person.
Yeah.
And if I don't like it, well, okay, fine, I don't like it. Do I think there's something that's too far? It's a weird one, because there are things that you can say that are just meant to be hurtful. And if that's a comedian's intention, then I would say they're not a very good comic. If it's just in the spirit of joking, trying to make people laugh, then maybe not. I think kind of anything goes. But it is nuanced. It's hard to say, but as a general rule, I think as long as you're, saying it with love, you can pretty much say whatever you want.
Yeah, I think Jimmy Carr said the joke that will get him cancelled, he's already told.
Yes.
And I can believe that. I saw him live. It was a good show. Fine. But Patrick, I'll just bring you in on this. I mean, cancel culture is a very real thing. It is a very real thing. And in your line of work, I mean, you're dicing with death, or I don't think you should be, by the way, but I suspect you are, really. One quote unquote offensive joke, and all of a sudden people get hold of it on Twitter, and you're done.
Yeah, but listen, this is the reason why it's become so dangerous now, because, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, there wasn't such a very popular thing as Twitter, social media, whatever. The whole point of coming to see live shows, live comedy, live anything, was that it was happening in the moment. Everything that happened in that room stayed in that room. We all were there for a good time, and you left. The problem now is someone records a soundbite, but what they do is they can edit just that bit. They're not even going to edit. They're not even putting the bit that you've said before it or after it. They've just literally taken that sound bit out. So that can literally cancel someone within seconds because it goes on the internet. This is the point. Where it has gone crazy. And the point that you were talking about here about, as you said there, if you don't like something, of course, we're not all going to agree with something. The amount of times I've been to a theatre show or been to the cinema and I've hated the ending of the play. I've never just out the actors and go, do you know what? I was with you until the end there. I don't know why you did that. And then just start punching the hell out of it. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and that's why you're not allowed back at Wicked. But there we go. Look, guys, can I just? I really appreciate both of you coming on. And can I just ask, have you guys got? Patrick, you're in the box at the minute, so I'll stick with you. Well, have you got any gigs coming up? Go on, bit of a plug.
Yeah. So I'm on a national tour. I'm in Ormskirk this Saturday, then in Nottingham Thursday, the 13th of May and 14th of May in Radcliffe-on-Trent, but everywhere. Check me out.
Good stuff. And yourself.
I've got a bunch of spots coming up. I'm doing Vauxhall Comedy Club this coming Thursday, and I'm doing...
What time?
In the evening. And then doing Comedy Unleashed at Backyard on Tuesday. That's always a great gig. Come to that. And I've got the Roast Battle UK semi-finals on Friday. Oh, you have to be mean. You have
Roast
to be mean.
Battle. I fancy a bit of that. When's that? The Roast
That's Friday. Friday 13th at Angel Comedy.
There's a bit of a roast battle that goes on between me and Patrick in the break.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly, massively so.
Which I always win, of course.
No, so I let her win. Anyway. Right, thank you very much, mate. Cheers for coming into the studio. Fantastic stuff there, of course. Comedian Jonathan Cogan. And just down the line was Patrick Monaghan. Great stuff. All right. Look, how do you feel about this, ladies and gentlemen? GBViews at GBNews, all right? GBNews.uk or whatever it is. Get in touch because, do you feel like comedy's becoming too woke? I want to know what you think about that. Are you afraid of cancel culture? Do you feel silence? Do you feel like when you're at a dinner party or at the pub that there are jokes that you want to tell that you just feel like you can't these days? GBViews, GBNews.
I think we've spoken about this actually just yesterday, I think. When I said my jokes, I make quite crass jokes sometimes, and I don't think it's to everybody.
If it makes me wince, as a rule, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, with some of the stuff we joke about, we probably wouldn't be.
Do you want to tell them one?
One of yours, should I?
Sorry,
no,
okay, we can't. Okay. Sorry, no, everyone, okay, all right, fine, thank you. Anyway, after the break, we'll be discussing how clean our water is after a campaign group accuses a water regulator of basically a lack of sewage prevention. I really hope it is that group called Top of the Poops, but anyway, there we go. Neil Oliver will be joining us. Before that, here's the news.
Saved by the news there, Patrick. It's 11:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. There are renewed calls for the government to impose a windfall tax on energy companies after oil giant Shell reported a big increase in profits. The company revealed record first quarter profits of £7.2 billion, triple the amount it made in the same quarter last year. Surging oil and gas prices have helped offset the cost of boycotting Russian supplies. Interest rates are expected to increase to their highest in 13 years when the Bank of England announces its decision this lunchtime. The base rate is set to go from 0.75% to 1% as the bank tries to bring rising inflation under control. The Prime Minister took his dog Dylan with him as he cast his vote for the local elections this morning. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer's also voted alongside his wife. Voters are choosing local representatives in England, Scotland and Wales, and there will also be an election for the Northern Ireland Assembly. The Kremlin has denied that Russian troops are storming the Azovstal plant in Mariupol, where Ukrainian fighters and civilians are still trapped. More than 300 people were evacuated from the steelworks yesterday. President Zelensky is asking the UN to help ensure the safe passage of a further 200, including women and children, still stuck inside the besieged port city. The UK and Japan are agreeing a new landmark defence deal as the Prime Minister hosts his Japanese counterpart in London. It's Fumio Kishida's first official visit to the UK. The pact will allow British and Japanese forces to deploy together to carry out joint exercises and disaster relief. And the Queen will miss the Royal Garden Party season and be represented by other members of the royal family instead. The head of state, who has mobility issues, has missed a number of events this year, but has been carrying out virtual engagements and her other duties. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. It's back to Patrick and Mercy with To The Point in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:38 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's. We're on your TV, radio and online.
We are indeed. Now, a campaign group, Wild Justice, not Top of the Poops, unfortunately, has accused the water regulator Ofwat of neglecting to stop sewage treatment plants releasing polluting discharge into watercourses.
Yes, well, Environment Agency data shows water companies in England discharged raw sewage into rivers and seas for more than 2.7 million hours. That was last year, 2021, and in 372,000 incidents. Well, how clean are our waterways then, and is it safe to nip down to the seaside for a dip in the sea?
Yes, well, and of course, are we taking the protection of our coastal environment seriously enough? Well, look, there is absolutely nobody better to talk to about this.
Yes.
It is, of course, the coast guy himself, GB News presenter Neil Oliver. Neil, you absolute legend. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me on the show.
No, good stuff. I mean, there was a few... well, there's quite a lot to get stuck into here, quite literally. I mean, how clean are our coasts then? It looks like they're just kind of cesspits.
Well, I think we often get told that the beaches and indeed the rivers, the coastline is cleaner than it used to be. That's a message that is often broadcast. But I can tell you, when we were filming the series Coast, more than once we covered the story of raw sewage being pumped finding its way into the sea. It gets dumped in rivers, and the rivers empty into the sea. And we often met with a group called, for example, Surfers Against Sewage. And these were guys that were going out surfing in Cornwall, for example, and they had horrific evidence of just what was being pumped into the sea that they were then surfing in. You know, the images that we were able to show. I mean, it was really graphic, really shocking stuff. So there's no getting away from the fact that...
How does it happen, Neil? Sorry to interrupt, mate. Sorry to interrupt. I don't understand how it happens.
Well, whenever there's an incident, I mean, where the water companies are responsible for getting the sewage, that which comes out your bath and comes out your toilet and goes into the sewerage system, it's got to go somewhere, and the companies, you know, process it and deal with it, and it's supposed to be clean water, or clean as possible, that finally gets dumped. But when there's an emergency, as they call it, say there's heavy rain or a flood, and the system is in danger of being overwhelmed, where the only other option would be for the sewage to find its way back up into people's homes, coming back up your toilet or coming back into the house, then there's the companies are then able to pump raw sewage, or to release raw sewage, untreated sewage, into the waterways. And of course, once it goes into the rivers, the rivers eventually empty into the sea. But protesters will tell you that the water companies have paid something. I think it's like 60 billion has been paid out to their investors in the form of dividend, you know, over a measurable period. And the allegation is that those companies are not spending enough investing in the systems that would prevent them being overwhelmed by the sort of emergencies that I'm talking about. I mean, you're talking about like getting on for 500,000 events like this in 2020, where raw sewage is just allowed to go into the rivers, and it is catastrophic. I mean, for example, there are only 200 chalk streams in the world. They're crystal clear water, because the water is filtered through the natural chalk. 200 in the world. 85% of those chalk streams are in England. And those are being destroyed because raw sewage is allowed to go into those chalk streams. They're often talked about as our coral reefs, but in fact they are infinitely rarer and more at threat than chalk reefs on account of sewage. And sewage undoubtedly goes into the sea all the time. I mean, you can smell it sometimes. You know, on the coast, in certain places, at certain times of the year, after certain kinds of incidents, you can smell it. You can see stuff that's, you know, you can see that the evidence, used sanitary items and the rest that washes back up onto the beach. It's absolutely happening. And I think it goes to the heart of something that's a bit empty and a bit hollow about the way that we like to claim that we care about the environment and that we're going to save the world. You know, as is so often the case, you know, protesters talk about saving the world, but they're not paying attention to what's literally happening in their own backyard. You know, we are a wasteful and messy, dirty species in many instances. We waste too much, we throw too much away, we expect the things that we flush away and throw away to just somehow disappear from our sight. But of course, that's not what happens. And so much of what we throw away and flush away just ends up coming back onto the beaches. And we've only got ourselves to blame. You know, we foul our own nest all the time.
God, I feel like I need we're showing footage of some dirty waterways there, and I feel like I need a bit of a shower after seeing that. But to end on a positive note, give us your most highly rated beaches.
Oh, my goodness. obviously, the beaches, the visual impact of the beaches in Cornwall are obviously famous. So many people, from Britain and around the world make a point of seeking out Cornwall. Those beaches are extraordinary. But for me, up on the west coast of Scotland, for example, or up on the north coast, Torresdale Bay, on the far north of Scotland, on the north coast, going off into the North Sea up there, absolutely breathtaking. The truth is, in the British archipelago, we have a coastline that measures about 12,000 miles. If you go in and out of all the fiddly bits, it's about 12,000 miles. 8,000 miles of that is in Scotland alone. On account of the nature of the landform of Scotland, but 12,000 miles of coastline that we have here. I've seen a great amount of it, and England, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, the number of beautiful, breathtaking places, and the necessity, the absolute obligation that we all have to care more about this unbelievably beautiful, precious place.
Gosh.
The British archipelago is, for me, one of the most beautiful places on the face of the earth. And the knowledge that we do things like pump raw sewage, into our waterways, needlessly so, I find personally shaming. But it does not take away, for me, from the absolute crystalline diamond beauty of our landscape.
You're so passionate about it, and it really shows. And just where can we catch you? Where can viewers and listeners catch you that they want to hear more from you?
Oh my goodness! Well, they can watch Neil Oliver live from 6 to 8 on a Saturday night on GB News. But
maybe you should have a segment called Neil's Beautiful Beaches.
Well, I'm unashamedly, proud of this landscape. It's partly because I've seen so much of it, but I've been all over the world as well. I've been all over Australasia. I've been in North America. I've been all around Europe. I've been in Africa. I've been in Antarctica and in the Arctic. I've seen plenty. I have not seen anywhere that is more beautiful than the beautiful places in Britain.
Bringing a tear to my eye.
Gem.
Oh, mate, honestly, goodness me. I tell you what, what I would pay for a tour of the coast with Neil Oliver. Fantastic stuff.
Let's organise that, Patrick. Let's do it. Mercy. Let's go. Let's take GB News live around the coast.
Absolutely.
Let's go coastal. Absolutely. Neil, you're a legend. Thank you so much, Neil Oliver. And we're pleased to say our very own Neil Oliver. Good stuff. Gosh, the way that man talks. Find someone who looks at you the way that Neil Oliver looks at a coast.
Beautiful beaches,
yeah. Neil Oliver's beaches. Good stuff. Right, okay, fantastic. Well, moving away from the beaches now.
I was going to make since we were speaking about comedy
it's good
earlier.
we're not Italian, because that would sound... Anyway, but...
I was going to make a joke. We were talking about comedy earlier and how far is too far. I was going to say maybe we can pump raw sewage into the channel as a... But, it's a joke. We're allowed to joke as a deterrent.
A joke. Yeah, no, absolutely. Better than a wave machine. But anyway, I suppose more immediate than Rwanda as well, anyway. But right now, regular GB News viewers will know that our very own Gloria Di Piero does a series of Real Me interviews with MPs, getting behind the politics to find out more about the person. And today, Gloria talks to Labour MP and Shadow Minister Peter Kyle. Now, he is 51, but he has a reading age of 8, apparently, and was diagnosed as dyslexic in his late 20s.
Yes, well, school was tough for him, and one teacher was especially cruel. So let's have a little look at that.
There's one moment where a teacher stood up and we were in English and we were doing Shakespeare, and suddenly, even though we weren't reading aloud and we were just reading the text and talking about the text, the teacher suddenly said, "Peter, why don't you just stand up and read this chapter?" And I was so shocked, because the teacher would have known full well that I wasn't capable of doing it, and asked me to do so. And the teacher was falling about laughing as I was doing it one word at a time with the pause and getting words wrong. But I remember very well looking around the room, and there was a couple of kids who were sniggering, but most of the kids were with me. They were as humiliated as I was. But that was the moment that I just switched off education. I just realised that I'm going to turn up, I'm going to get out as quickly as I can, but that's just not for me. So that is the moment. When you say a long time ago, so many of those memories will have dimmed, they have. But when you are humiliated, that's something that stays with you for life.
Yeah, you're not going to want to miss that. It's obviously yet another instalment of an incredibly powerful Gloria Di Piero special there. And the full interview with Peter Kyle is at 12:35 today. It's an inspiring story, and it's definitely, as I've said, one not to miss.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's take you through some of the headlines of the day that you might have missed. Well, The first tweet made by Twitter boss Jack Dorsey was sold as an NFT to a man for £2.9 million in 2021. Buyer Sina Estavi, a Bitcoin entrepreneur, called it the Mona Lisa of the digital world.
You just knew he'd look like
Well,
that.
Sina had just put the digital Mona Lisa back up for sale, this tweet, asking for $48 million, dollars, hoping to make a profit on the investment for the NFT. But the thing is, Sina is standing to make a $2.9 million loss.
Good. He's an idiot.
Yes, absolutely. As in the week since the first listed NFT for resale, the highest bid is
good.
6.8 grand.
Of course it is, because no one will be stupid enough to pay £2 million for a tweet.
Yeah.
What an idiot.
Well, he explained, Estavi, he explained, my offer to sell was high and not everyone could afford it.
Yes.
And added that he no longer was sure he wanted to sell it. Does he not have better things to do?
Well, apparently not. But I mean, the whole thing here is just insane, isn't it? I mean, but I suppose people have got more money than sense, haven't they? Hey, he's entitled to do what he wants with his own money, but I mean, bonkers. Anyway, not a sound investment, we could say. Anyway, moving away from that, something that I prefer. The shirt worn by Diego Maradona when he scored two of the world's most memorable goals to knock England out of the 1986 World Cup, cheating little, has been sold at auction for more than £7 million.
Yes, well, famously known as the Hand of God shirt. And we all remember when Diego Maradona punched the ball in the back of the net, while the final price of the shirt sold for a remarkable, get this, £7.1 million, marking an auction record for a sports item. However, right in the final moments of bidding, an Argentinian delegation launched a final bid to bring the shirt back home to the nation, but they were unsuccessful. Definitely a good investment there, I would say. Not like that Jack Dorsey tweet.
No, exactly. No. Well, no, good stuff. But I mean, I thought that was fantastic. A really iconic shirt there. And unfortunately, the Argentinians not being able to quite repatriate something. Who would have thought that? Anyway, former Spice Girl Mel B, known as Scary Spice, has been officially given an MBE by Prince William for services to charitable causes and vulnerable women.
Yes, well, Mel became a patron of the charity Women's Aid in 2018 after leaving what she described as an abusive relationship, while the singer said she was dedicating the award to all women who have been abused amidst a backdrop of rising domestic abuse offences during the pandemic. She also said the Prince commended her work and they had a bit of a laugh about getting the award. He said he couldn't believe he was actually presenting Mel B with an award.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? By the way, just first and foremost, she's done a huge amount of work for domestic violence causes, etc. And actually, domestic violence is on a massive increase.
Yes.
Lockdown didn't help, etc. But just in general, it is. So really, her work has arguably never been more vital. But just moving on from that, it's interesting because even the Prince William gets starstruck.
Yeah.
By other people. They are like...
Because he's of our generation, well, not our generation, I think he's 40-something, but he is of the younger generation, and so he would have grown up with that kind of music as well.
Exactly, and it is fascinating, really, because we do forget, I think, that because Prince William is one of the most famous people on the planet, but they do get starstruck. It's quite funny, actually, when you see them sometimes. He's met David Beckham a few times now. They tried to do the World Cup bid with him, but earlier on, he get quite giddy when he was around David Beckham.
Yeah.
People
Imagine being so important. A future queen is starstruck by you.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. And there was one of him as well on the red carpet for the last Bond film that came out, and you've never seen a man look. He's like a child. He's got his tux on. And you think, you're Prince William, and he looks exactly how I'd look on the red carpet, and so just beaming, fantastic. So it shows they're real people.
Well, from one prince to another, we discussed earlier how the Queen will be missing her garden party, sadly, this summer due to poor health. I wouldn't even say it's poor health; it's just old age. She's got exceptional health for her.
Yeah, well, exactly.
But there is still hope she will attend her Platinum Jubilee celebrations in June. However, it's looking like another royal will be absent. Prince Harry has reportedly pledged to play the full summer polo season in California, including a match set to take place at the same time as the Jubilee weekend. So, he might be playing polo. He's too busy playing polo to attend his grandmother's funeral. Well, not funeral, but Jubilee celebrations. Apologies.
Jubilee celebrations.
She'll
Quite the opposite, actually, a celebration of her life.
Jubilee celebrations. The Queen is alive and well. Of course she is. The Sussex's biographer and friend Omid Scobie has claimed the Prince has committed to playing in the Cheval Athletics USPA intra-circuit in Santa Barbara, which runs from June the 3rd to June the 19th.
Well, and it's not to be missed, clearly, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure I buy this. I don't believe he would actually miss her Jubilee celebrations. Surely.
Well, maybe. I mean, it just look. My risible disdain for that particular chat.
That would be the last straw, I think, for some people.
Yeah. It would almost definitely be. You're playing polo instead of going to your nan's platinum jubilee.
Yes, not funeral.
And crucially, not funeral.
Yes,
no.
absolutely.
Anyway, that's it from us here. Very shortly, it is anyway, because we're going to go to views first. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Lots of love coming in for Gloria De Piero, who's just sashayed her way into the studio here. It's going to be a good one, this, of course, with Peter Kyle, the real me. It gets personal, gets up close and personal, unflinching as well. So there we go. That'll be fantastic as well. So make sure that you tune in for Gloria, the wonderful Gloria. And also Mel B as well. People are asking when you're getting your MBE, Mercy.
For services to what exactly? Exactly.
There we go.
When I find something to service, I will.
Good stuff, right. OK, so there we go. Yes, and lots of reaction as well to the Coast Guy as well. Neil Oliver, a legend, of course. Make sure that you do check out his show. But it's an absolute honour and an absolute privilege to hand over the reins now to Gloria De Piero. It's going to be a fantastic show, this as well. Make sure that you tune in for The Real Me. Thank you, everyone who's been getting in touch as well. GBviews at gbnews.uk. I will be back tomorrow. We've got an election special tomorrow.
Yes, we have, indeed. See you tomorrow.
Take it easy.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Dry for many today with sunny spells, but there will be still some rain in the far northwest, mainly northern and western parts of Scotland, because of a number of weather fronts which are just toppling in over an area of high pressure. However, high pressure really here to stay for the next few days. That's going to lead to a lot of fine and dry weather, whilst these weather fronts will occasionally bring rain, mainly to the northern half of the UK. So a few showers for northern England, perhaps one or two showers developing over the West Midlands and parts of Wales into the afternoon. Otherwise, a lot of fine, dry weather for England and Wales, sunny spells in places, some thicker cloud at times for the Midlands. And with the sunny spells, temperatures reaching 22, perhaps 23 Celsius in the southeast. Cooler there towards the northwest, mid-teens. And for Scotland and Northern Ireland, a cloudy day with spells of rain for the north and west of Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain turn more persistent and heavy at times through the night. Also, they'll start to sink further south into the rest of Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. 12 Celsius for Glasgow, Belfast, 8 for Birmingham, 10 for London. So a relatively mild start to Friday, but plenty of dry weather for England and Wales at least, with some sunshine first thing. However, cloud and rain is slowly sinking south. It arrives into northern England, North Wales by the afternoon, and it will be heavy and persistent, particularly over, say, Snowdonia and the Lake District. Feeling unpleasant under that rain, 15, 16 Celsius, 22 or even 23 or 24 for London, cooler for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but brighter skies follow with some showers also for northern and western Scotland in particular. They die away through the night on Friday, whilst our area of cloud and rain sinks south, peters out as high pressure builds, and that high pressure will lead to a lot of fine and dry weather through the weekend. Bye-bye.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get